very important because over 40 million students in this country. Now, we also need to narrow that down and find out how many are in this city who will be eligible to vote. They can tell you that. They can tell you that. They have those statistics already. And what efforts are going to be made. We, the voters, have not heard anything about voter registration day. Now, I don't know, they generally send out something. And then you have registration sites that you can do and go and register. But the deadline for registration is October the 5th. And that's mighty early, considering that even now we're beginning to wind down our summer activities and get ready to get into the fall mode. And people will say that, well, I just didn't have time. You're putting too much on me. So we need some kind of way, some kind of venue to get the word out to people that, look, you have to be registered by October the 5th. And as far as seniors are concerned, those who are 65 or older, they can take advantage of the vote by mail, and they can vote in the convenience of being in their own home. But before you can do that, you have to have the Dallas County Elections Department, and they're the ones that handle the ballot. They're the only ones who handle the ballot, and rightfully so. But you have to be registered with them, and then again, there's a deadline for doing that as well. So we have a lot on our plates. Like I was saying, there are 125 offices that are going to be on the ballot in November. And that's going to be a very, very important election. And we want people to be informed. We don't want them to just go and vote, because we know that elections have consequences. And we're very much aware of that. So we don't want to be on the tail end of the consequence. So we need to get active, and we need to get active now. This is the end of school already. Schools open, most schools open, some of them opened last week, and then there are going to be more next week, and so forth and so on. And then you have your activities, and then the holidays are coming, and people are getting ready for that. So there's a lot to be divided, but then there's a lot to be learned about before that happens. Yes, ma'am.
Can you, even if it's, well, okay, can you, there's got to be like a diagram. All the input, people who affect making it happen, to go to the schools to vote a registrar, and then and then they pick it up and then turn it in. So, who are all the? I know our far north Dallas Richardson Democrats. We had probably 60 people the other day. We all got updated in our voter registrar from somebody from the county. So we all got certified.
Well,
But now where do we do? And who's going to even contact us, or how are we going to know where to go?
My first question would be, do you know who your precinct chairman is? Do you know that?
I do, because I was a precinct chair before that. But I happen to know, but I think most people don't know, but you're right. You should find
That's where it begins. All politics is local. It all begins at the local level, and it works itself up. And we're going to be voting for senators, we're going to be voting for representatives, House of Representatives, people who will be making major decisions that affect your daily lives.
Right.
Therefore, we need to know that. And we need to know all of the other things about what's happening in other states. But we need to know what's happening right here in our own backyard. Because just like many children can't tell you their relatives beyond who their grandparents are, maybe their great-grandparents are, voters can't tell you who's who. They don't know either. So before we start patting ourselves on the back for being adults, we need to realize that in many ways we're children too. So we have a lot of growing up to do.
In response to her question, I'm sure the Republicans have a system for this, but the Democrats have a system. Carol Donovan is supervising the organization of that, as far as I know.
Well, yeah, I've been a precinct chair for 5 years. I've been a Democratic precinct chair.
Yeah, so people need to know, I think, that each precinct has one Democrat and one Republican.
Yes, exactly.
And so
We're
if
all
you're
Americans.
Democrat,
I don't know where that
person.
concept came about, that we're not on the same team here.
Yeah.
I mean, we just have we have different opinions, but we're all Americans.
Yeah.
Colonel Muldrow, I'm precinct chair in your old district for when you went to Dallas Theological Seminary.
Okay, I live in Denton,
But you live in Denton now,
I live
yeah,
in Denton,
right.
yeah.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, they just opened, a new precinct position came open in the district that I'm in now, and I'm thinking about it, going through it,
Do it, just do
but
it.
I'm not sure.
Well, yes, let's get out of the they mode and what they are doing and what they are disseminating. If nobody is doing it, do it yourself. I mean, Dallas County election is begging for people to step up and be precinct chairs. And no one should feel in any way intimidated by doing that, whether you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, because we are all Americans. If more than anything, I hate that concept is beginning to prevail, that we are all on different teams, because we're not. But anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you, the comment that I wanted to make. And thanks again for your presentation. Did you have something?
Last Thursday, two of our own, Jan Axon, who's sitting back there, and I, Amar Migdal, were appointed Deputy Registrar of Voters for Dallas County. In our meeting next Saturday, we will bring applications, enrollment forms for you to sign up, or if you need to report a change of address or change of name, we'll be here for that. Any questions about being able to vote?
Okay. When I was a student at Stetson University in Florida, I organized an event around the Vietnam War. And the school suggested that I invite a fellow named Max Cleland, who was a graduate of Stetson. Turned out he went to the high school, one over from me when I was in high school, but I didn't know him, to come as a veteran, a Vietnam veteran who was opposed to the Vietnam War. So I went to the airport to pick him up, and when I picked him up, I learned that he had lost one arm and both legs in Vietnam. We went back to the student center. I took him to his room, and he asked me to help him take a bath because he couldn't do it himself. We've been good friends ever since. Now, in 2002, a right-wing fascist Republican by the name of Saxby Chambliss ran ads against him, morphing him into Saddam Hussein. Okay, this is what Republicans do. They're filthy, they're dirty, they're hateful. And it's disgusting that they would do that. Saxby Chambliss had never served a day in his life. Now, let's move on to John Kerry. John Kerry won multiple Purple Stars, and the Republicans ridiculed him for that, because Republicans do not respect the military. The Republicans do not respect anyone. Now, further, guess what happened in the last couple of weeks in Georgia, Randolph County? Let me show you a photograph. because this is relevant. You see this woman? You see the color of her skin? She's an African American. She is the Democratic nominee for governor of Georgia. So what have they done in Randolph County, which is a majority African American county? The Republicans have shut down 7 out of 9 polling places.
Wow.
The two that are left open are the ones where most of the white people vote. One of the ones where the black vote was 99% because of the area was shut down. Now, that was, of course, the Republicans would never admit they did that for racist reasons, but you know damn well it's because Republicans are bigoted, hateful racists. Republicans, white Republicans who pretend to be Christian, are terrified because they have treated people of color and gays and women badly for the last 50 years. And what they're terrified of is that when people of color are the majority, that they are going to get the same treatment that they've been dealing out to other people all these years. It's disgusting. Now, let me tell you, let's talk about voter registration voter IDs here in Texas. Okay. I live in the downtown area of Dallas. At the time, I was not only a voter registrar, but I was also an election judge. But had the new voter ID law gone through, I would have been ineligible to vote if it hadn't been thrown out. But at the point that I thought it was going to come into fruition, I decided I needed to get a voter ID. So I researched it. I went to Maryland. I got my birth certificate from Georgia. And then you have to have 2 IDs. I didn't have a driver's license. My passport was expired for too long. But luckily, I had my inoculation certificate for my vaccines from the 1950s that was in some papers that my mother had gave me. And if it had not been for that, I would not have been allowed to get a voter ID so that I could vote. So I took my documents. I went down to City Hall, which is where all the public transportation is, to the DMV down there, and they said, oh, we're sorry, we can't issue voter IDs here. You have to go to the voter ID place up in North Dallas. Well, from downtown to take the public transit to go up there and get it, get in line, get the ID, and come back home took 7 hours. Now, 7 hours for someone who works as a housekeeper at Marriott is the difference between paying their rent this month or putting food on the table for their children next week. This is what racist, hate-filled, bigoted Republicans are doing. That's right. And let's not forget about these racist Republicans who stole people's children, sent them to kiddie concentration camps where the guards sexually assaulted them. That's right. And this is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a monster. If you voted for Donald Trump, you are a monster. If you plan to vote for a Republican in the next election, you are still a monster. It is disgraceful, it's disgusting, it's anti-American, and I'm sorry, I know that you are giggling at me and thinking, oh, isn't that sweet? But you know what? You're not Christian. You're not Christian. You're not decent human beings. Deep down inside, you know it. Because here's the truth. You don't have a soul. What you have is a festering boil, pus-oozing, festering boil where your soul should be. That's how hate-filled you are. I'm sick and tired of it. The Democrats are going to take over this country. We're going to get our country back, and we're going to have the gloriously diverse country that we aspire to be. Thank you.
That's their job. I mean.
Okay, Jan, if you have something to say it at the mic when you get your turn.
Whatever. What?
And yes, I was talking about you. And you know it.
No, you're not.
Huh?
No, you're not.
You vote the Republican side. Huh? You voted for Donald
I
Trump.
understand.
Don't yell at me, Jeffrey.
I said that you voted for
I
Donald Trump.
understand strong feelings, but I would hate to think that any of us thought we could judge other people.
Why not?
And because judgment is up to God, not to us. Judge not, lest ye be judged, and we cannot see the hearts of other people. I do not believe all Republicans are fascists. I know some that aren't. I mean, the bigots and all that. They're not all that way. I understand feelings. I understand your intense feeling, however. But I would not, there's a lot of talk going around that dehumanizes people, dehumanizes immigrants, dehumanizes minorities. Let's not start dehumanizing each other here. I don't know that that helps anything. When I heard the topic tonight, I thought someone gave me, at the North Dallas Democratic Women, the lady who runs it, her husband was a political science teacher, and he gave us a copy of the Alabama voters test that used to be given to African Americans. And I wish to goodness I could have found that to give you a copy of it. None of us could have passed it. That's the history of that is a history, and that was not Republican or Democrat. That was just the way it was. What's going on in Dallas? The Republicans are making a concerted effort to eliminate people from the voter rolls, and gerrymandering it's not a question anymore. It's already been the Supreme Court. Is it the Supreme Court that rules on that? It's already made a decision that will have to be changed before the next election. One of the proponents of the Democratic platform is to set up in each state arbitrary committees who will supervise how this is done, how gerrymandering is done, and it would be nonpartisan. I don't think too many people would disagree with that. Let me see what else. I can't see up here. There's been a lot of frivolous lawsuits as far as what Republicans are doing. There's a lot of frivolous lawsuits that are going around. Carol Donovan, y'all may remember Carol Donovan, who's the chairperson of the Democratic Party in Dallas. They tried to bring a suit against her for some technicality, and the District Senate Court of Appeals, which is all Republican, acknowledged that it was frivolous and dismissed it. There's something else came up recently, and I can't remember what it was. I'm wondering, I've been seeing in the news about the lines in the driver's license offices, the long lines. I'm wondering if that somehow might not be related to people getting voter ID and less people there to facilitate the process, getting an ID to vote. I'm wondering if that might not be there. Someone said to me, and this is someone who's a social worker that votes all the time, she said it's so difficult in Dallas because we have so many elections. She said every time you turn around there's another election, and a lot of places don't do it like this. They combine things so that there are fewer times that you have to go up to vote. That would be something that would be something to think about. This past week on NPR, there was a person who was reporting on the Democracy Project report. You can find this on the internet, democracyprojectreport.com, and it stated specifically that 84% of Americans agree that racism and economics are the two key issues we face now. So to say that it's not involved in elections, I mean, you can't deny that it's not there. Democrats tend not to vote during the midterm. Republicans vote. They're very faithful voters. I remember a few years ago, when I first started voting in Dallas, I went to the Lutheran Church over by North Park, and it was a Republican area, and I thought, gosh, they're going to bring them in on wheelchairs next time, but bring them in on beds. They were bringing all these elderly people, their relatives, in to vote. Democrats don't do that. Democrats tend to vote only in the presidential elections, so we need to work on that. Early voting has been encouraged by the Democratic Party this year. Mail-in voting, paper ballots, to have a document of how you voted, your record for your voting. And let's see, one last point. There was a person who wrote a book called How Democracies Die, and he said that democracies only function properly when 90% of the citizens vote. Here we are in a mess. We need to vote. Thank you.
Well, there are organizations that that look into voter fraud. Blackboxvoting.org is one of them, run by Beverly Harris, and she has tracked how electronic voting is controlled remotely, and votes can be switched by somebody pulling a switch and making it go one way or the other way. They do like some kind of fractional voting. She's got a name for it. That's blackboxvoting.org. I just found a truethevote, I think, .org. There's probably a number of other sites that do that. But as to voter fraud, probably the most blatant example we've had of that in the past couple of years is when the DNC stole the primary from Bernie Sanders. That was the most public ripoff that I've ever seen. And it really pissed off a lot of Bernie Sanders voters, some of whom voted for Donald Trump as a result. And as to gerrymandering, the Democrats hired somebody. I read the story some time ago. I don't remember all the details, but this guy was a really crack gerrymanderer. They hired him sometime during the 1980s, and he gerrymandered California to where the Democrats control California. And now we have a bunch of fruitcakes running California that want to fine you $1,000 for giving a straw to somebody, and they regulate cow farts. And there's a number of other things like that that have come out of the California legislature. There's no telling what they're going to come up with next. And the evidence that the state has been gerrymandered to where the vote is not representative of Californians is that something like 50 or 60% of Californians want to move out of California. You know, if the person you voted for got in and did what you wanted, you wouldn't want to move. But most Californians want to get out of California because of the fruitcakes that are running California due to the Democratic gerrymandering that was done during the 1980s. I think it was the 1980s. And the guy has a name, and there's a whole story to it. And you can look it up if you want. And as to the Alabama Senate election, something like 34% of the people that voted a straight Republican ticket ended up voting for the Democrat candidate somehow. So I don't know how you vote for a straight Republican ticket and your vote ends up counting for the Democrat, and that would have been more than the margin of error in that election. So we have an illegitimate senator from Alabama, and I don't know if that's going to get challenged or not. But there's a lot of people looking into vote fraud, and all we heard about was vote fraud on the Republican side tonight. It's not limited to the Republicans, I can tell you. But anyway, as to who's going to win the midterms this year, Look up #walkaway on YouTube or Facebook.
Vote if you want to know what's going to happen in the elections.
Walk away because of the Russian troll bullshit.
Well, I want to first gig my buddy. You know, when I make presentation, he's never here. I mean, special efforts even tonight.
Well, Calvin, you came late.
Well, when you retire, you go and get there when you get there. It's the only point in your life, if you have a pretty good retirement program, you can do what you want to do. But it's a short period. But I've outlived the mortality table, so I don't have anything to complain about. I would like to make a report. I tried to make something similar to that, but in everything you said, but they didn't recently just start with President Trump. It started really with the silent majority with President Nixon in 1968, because he was targeted. And what the Republicans do with their think tanks, they figure out issues and how to a negative approach to get people to not vote for some candidates. They demonize them. They demonize them, and then people believe the demonization and they vote the other way. And this is something it's used by both. I want to deal with one thing. A large number of the Republicans now were former Democrats. There was what you call realignment after the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed. Texas was one of the last states to get there, but the Democrats controlled Texas for more than 100 years. In 1978, William Clements became the first Republican in 100 years. And since that time, the Republican, but they started leaving the Democratic Party in 1964 and crystallized in Texas. But when President Johnson won in 1964, he lost the 8 southern states. And that's what he had forecast before that took place. And I think if we're going to have government by the people, for the people, of the people, then we should want everybody to vote. The 90% is a good target. But when Democrats were in control of Texas, I lived in Texas during some of that time, they did the same thing that Republicans are doing right now. But the damage that really was done to African Americans in the South was done by Democrats. But I guess they changed in 1964, but a large number of Republicans voted for the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65, Fair Housing Act of 68. In Texas, we had 3 congressional people that voted for the Civil Rights. Ralph Yarber, Congressman Gonzalez out of San Antonio, and Congressman Brooks from Beaumont area. And those are the only 3 that voted for them. All the rest of them voted against us. Texas has a unique history. And that thing that boggles my mind is African Americans are caught up in it just as much as other Americans are. Is that in Texas was not, it's believed by a number of African Americans, not as bad as Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, and those southern states in Louisiana. But in reality, the outcomes were the same. The only thing is, in the old days, if you had what is called portable integration. Anything you could pick up and take with you could get. So you could go to Neiman Marcus and buy a garment, you couldn't try it on, and you couldn't take it back. But for some, that was different. You couldn't do that in Mississippi and Alabama. But those are some of the things, so it's just not a recent phenomenon. The Democrats did it, the Republicans are doing it now. It's not right. I think they do need to have commissions, nonpartisan commissions, to redraw the district lines. And I think that's the only way we get the politics out of it. And it won't be totally out of it, but I think we get a fair deal. Texas, they've changed the Voter Registration Act somewhat, but the Supreme Court didn't make all the changes that was being requested, and that seems to be what it's going to be in Texas. But Republicans are primarily Democrats, former Democrats. Governor Perry, they never deal with issues. All Governor Perry says is Sanchez, when he ran against him, is not liberal. It's too liberal to be governor. And that's all he said, and he won. And Governor Abbott didn't say that very much more against Wendy Davis, and he'll do the same thing about the Democratic candidate this year. But the only way a representative market can work is people are fairly well educated and think for themselves. As long as people don't think for themselves, they're gonna, something that sounds good, they're gonna do it. Republicans are very good at framing things and themes that seem to be good, in the reality they are not. But, and that's what we need to understand. We should learn to respect each other and to get along with each other and recognize we all have the same problem. We basically have a class system in the United States. We use race to enable the people not focus on that. But you look at not the Voting Rights Act, but the tax cut law, you can have 5.5 million and not pay any income tax and estimate tax. It was 1.5 million before the old act. And so a lot of the money is going in. Now they do want to deal, to make Medicare a voucher program, and that will make it not good for most people. They want to make changes in the retirement, disability, and retirement programs to offset the cost of this tax cut law, which is going to add more, about 1.5 trillion to debt. But if people don't wake up and get beyond these peripheral issues, we're in trouble. And it's sheer evidence of it right now. Thank you.
I just wanted to let you guys know that I volunteer with an organization called Headcount, and it's headcount.org. And they go into concerts all across America, and they register young people. And they have registered 500,000 voters already since they started, almost 30,000 just this year. And they're very active in Dallas. I am not a candidate in Dallas County, but it sounds like a lot of you guys do live in Dallas County. And if you're interested in getting involved with this organization, they are doing a lot of get out the vote initiatives over the next couple months, and especially during early voting. There are some things that are going on right now. If you'd like to know more about it, they're looking for some donors to help them do voter shuttles and also concerts around the early voting times, and getting people to the polls and then giving incentives to people that have voted, and it's all geared towards young people. So if anyone's interested in get behind some of those initiatives, I can put you in contact with those people. They're doing a big fun extravaganza around the midterm elections, the 2 weeks of early voting, and I can put you in touch with those people because they're doing some really exciting work right here in our own community. So, thank you.
Okay,
Go up.
you want me to go up there?
Jim,
Were you gonna go up
something to
there?
say? I was gonna speak, yeah.
Oh, I'd like to kind of follow up on her.
Okay, all
Are you
right.
speaking about this? Or another
This is
topic?
kind of the rebuttal period. I mean, there's structure to the
Any?
meetings here.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you want to go first, I can still talk after.
Well, I sincerely want to apologize. I did not get here on time for Curtis's presentation. That's never stopped me from getting up during the rebuttal period yet. But I really don't have anything to rebut because I don't know what was presented. But on the subject of vote and vote fraud, I guess the first time I ran into the question of vote fraud was in Washington, D.C. on the Mall when I was taping a conference there, and James Collier spoke. James and his brother wrote a book called Vote Scam back in the 1990s, and he really was a gutsy person, and I believe he was a Democrat. One of the things about vote fraud is it affects everybody, and it is a form of free speech. If you're denied your vote, if your vote is not counted, then you didn't speak. You were not allowed to speak. So one of the things he brought up very emphatically is he said, Israel has paper ballots, Britain has paper ballots, India has paper ballots. Only Americans are dumb enough to go to the polls and vote on computers that are counted downtown by crooks. Now, in 2000, I had a chance to spend a few days videotaping an entire conference on vote fraud. That was in Cincinnati. That was the National Vote Fraud Convention, where we had presenters from all over the country reporting in about the techniques of vote fraud that were used in their areas. And there are certain indicators, and this is something we all need to watch for and do our best. I don't think there's any area that is more important to keep your wits about you than voting. And there were certain numbers that were indicators, like for instance, the vote would come in, it would be like 84 to 16, 84 to 16, 84 to 16. And you'd see that that was basically a computer-generated stealing of the vote, because you can't have those kind of patterns recurring as regularly as they were occurring. And some of this was being reported from California, where there was an extensive amount of vote fraud. But right here in Texas, we have vote fraud too. We have a significant amount of vote fraud. One of the other tricks that I call it, you know, when you want to look at the foe, who is the foe? My favorite foe is big money. Big money operates through both parties. They pull the strings. They elect who they want to, they think. We try. And they try to basically keep the peons down. So I don't look at it as being a strictly Republican-Democrat issue, because even the Democrats basically sell out to the big corporations. And your guy that you send to Washington or send to your local state government, you're counting on him to represent you, and he's representing big money. So, you know, that's the common enemy. I'm not saying there aren't significant differences, and I happen to be on the right rather than the left, but I actually didn't vote for Trump because I haven't registered in so long they dropped me off the rolls. So I didn't get a chance to. But one of the other methods of vote fraud is where you will have, like especially in local elections, this is something to watch for. And the thing to watch for is you'll have a thing where the challenger is actually ahead in the election, and you know, maybe the local radio station is reporting, and the challenger's pulling ahead, the challenger's pulling ahead. Oops, the computers went down. A few minutes later, the computers are restored now. The incumbent's ahead. The incumbent wins the election. I was coming back from the vote fraud convention. I was traveling through Oklahoma on my way back to Dallas, and I was laughing so hard I could barely drive, because that was happening on the radio on some little station while I'm driving down the road. So I don't know what to say. Computerized voting is a bad idea. It's an absolute bad idea, and many programmers have spoken out, even in the inception of this whole computerized voting. And we don't really have control of the media anymore. I don't know, maybe you think you do, but I know anytime I wanted to get news on the media, I mean, something totally different gets up there. So, I mean, if you have any cause or any, you know, just legal cause or anything like that, you're not going to get it reported, not if big money doesn't want to report it. So I would say polling is, you know, having people at the polls. these are all very useful things, because here in the state of Texas, we had Laura Presley come and speak here. I don't know if Tom mentioned it. And she had an election stolen from her for city council in Austin. Just right out and out stolen. And then we begin to find out they don't keep records. There's no paper trail. Oh, there's a computer record. Oops, gee, that just got erased. Gee, nothing to follow up on here. Let's just move on down the road. So these are the games they play. We need a new level of accountability for our public officials, which are supposed to be our public servants. They are supposed to be serving us. And somehow or other they think they're on top of it all. Let's turn that around.
Paper ballot.
Paper ballot.
Paper ballot.
Paper ballot.
Very good.
Saves paper ballots, numbered.
I'm not good at initiating, I'm better at reacting.
Am I the last one standing? I guess I am.
I wanted to say something else if I get a chance, but she was going to say something.
Were you going to say something?
I don't know. My whole thing is I always, if someone says something, I'm thinking of it right there and reacts, and then after it's all settled, I'm like, oh, it's over and it's gone and it's
You wanna
gone.
go up here
So
again?
I don't really, I don't necessarily initiate or wrap it up.
I want to say something,
Because you're good at
a couple of things. First of all, the so-called hashtag walkaway, that is a right-wing Republican dirty tricks campaign to the purpose of which is to create the impression that Democrats are upset with the Democratic Party and they're walking away. All you have to do is Google it. You will see all the news reporting. You'll see the Snopes on it, and you can giggle and laugh and smirk, but that's what it is. So don't tell me that Democrats are walking away and not going to vote because of some hashtag created by a bunch of right-wing Republicans. So don't pay any attention to walk away.
Good.
Second thing is black box voting. I've known Beth Harris, who is the owner of that website, since 2001. And her sole focus is on the problems with voting equipment. She doesn't get into voter fraud in the context that we've been talking about it here, which is voter suppression. Now,
Is that .org or .com?
I think it's .org, blackboxvoting.org.
And so what's her purpose?
Well, there's a lot of vote fraud.
It's about the problems with voting equipment.
Voting
Yeah.
machines.
Voting machines that can be used to change, that can be manipulated to change the vote. For example,
Which is every
in-
single one of them. Every single one
well,
of them.
I'll get to that, but in
Okay.
in 2002, when Max Cleland was running for re-election in Georgia, my cousin Joel Williams, who was a professor of computer science at Georgia Tech, testified in Congress after that election that Diebold Corporation went through the entire state of Georgia and put an uncertified load on all of the computerized voting machines prior 2 weeks before the election. So we have no clue who actually won that election. Now, the only voting system that can be audited, that is counted by hand and counted by machine equally easily, is in fact the optical scan system that we use here during on election day in Dallas County, where you mark the ballot. So you physically mark the ballot, you know exactly how you voted it, you put it in the machine counts it. However, if there's any question, those ballots can be counted by hand equally easily as they could be counted by the machine. That is the only system, I believe, that is reliable. Now,
So where else is it?
I'm sorry?
Where else is it?
It's used in a lot of places around the country. It's also used for early voting in Dallas County. So, in my opinion, if you're eligible to early vote, you should early vote and not, I'm sorry, you should vote by mail. It's used by mail, not early voting. Early voting uses computerized machines.
Yeah, don't ever vote on a computer.
So in Dallas County, the best thing to do is vote by mail or vote on election day, because then you're voting on a paper ballot which you physically marked yourself.
Right.
Okay? And there is talk on the internet of organizing a general strike sometime soon. It would have to be soon for the November election, to demand that the electronic voting machines be eliminated and that paper ballots be used, because paper ballots are the only thing that is reliable. And if we can't take the time to mark a paper ballot and to count them, we just, what do we have? It's clear. And listen, I've been a computer programmer since 1973. I used to teach computer science at Georgia State University in Atlanta, and I was hired by EDS, that's why I'm in Dallas, to be a trainer for their systems engineers. And that's how I got to Dallas. And so I do know something about this stuff, and I guarantee you there is no real way that you can prove that an electronic voting machine is accurate, because there's no way that you can prove that it hasn't been manipulated. You see? Sure. And that's the problem. Even if you believe they're 1,000% secure, there's still no way that you can prove that. And so the only acceptable voting system is a paper ballot system. And, in very small elections, it might be paper ballots counted by hand by the ballot board. But, in larger elections, it can be optical scan. Could I have some more iced tea, please? Thank you. And so, anyway, that's the sum of it. Now,
To say don't vote unless if it's on computerized, that you have to go by what Dallas County says they're going to set it up. If you're not satisfied with that,
right,
then you contact Dallas County, which is an arm of the Department of State down in Austin.
Right. Right.
But if you don't vote, your alternative is not to vote. And
no. That was good. Thank you for reminding me. That was the other thing that I wanted to say. Do not in any way interpret my suggestion that we would like to have a general strike in order to get paper ballots to mean that you should not vote in November. I don't care what happens. I don't care how you vote. You need to get there and vote in this election, because we have to vote the Republicans out and get control of our country. And we won't do it. And the only way that you can overcome the tricks with the electronic machines is by voting in such overwhelming majorities that it's impossible for the computerized equipment to flip the ballot. Because what these machines do, when they flip the ballot, what they do is they flip it just a few percentage points so that it's believable. But if it's a 60 to 40% vote in favor of the Democrats, and somehow the Republicans win by 51%, then it's blatantly obvious that the election was stolen. Thank you.
He's saying there will be a paper ballot, not.
I guess I'm the last one standing. Looks like it. I don't see anybody else. Oh, come on up here if you want to.
You're not going to,
Want me to look at it?
all right.
All right.
I'm proud to have been a moderate Democrat for many years. And over the years I have voted for several Republicans. But I just wanted to say two words. One, tolerance. When we get up here to speak, we should be tolerant of everyone in the room and not otherwise. And second, remember what Aretha Franklin said? Respect.
know, like I said, it's so hard for me to initiate talking because, like I say, I hear something that's like right then I think of it, and then we go on to something else, and I'm just floating all over the place by then. I also thank everybody here and for Tom and Susan for providing this forum for us. I don't know anything else like it in Dallas. We have clubs, I'm sure, for each side, or that we can come together, because it seems like we're always like half liberal, half conservative here. And so it's been very interesting, often contentious, but I think we need that.
Yeah, that's good.
Because in a group like this, we can stop and feel if it's someone you're sitting next to, or across the room, or someone, hey, I'm friends with them, or whatever. So I think there's a good purpose in this group, and I just really appreciate it. It's been going on a long time, and we should bring it forward, and especially the next few months, because until the election, we're going to have a lot of angst about things, I'm sure, both sides. And so let's do something to maybe, look, we have all that room back there. Maybe everybody agreed to bring 1 or 2 people next time and really blow it out and really have good, more people, and maybe the first time people won't come up and speak, but they're going to learn and share and say, hey, there's a group out there that can handle it both, and we can all survive. So for all of us, one way or the other, I hope we survive in November. Okay, bye.
I guess I'm the last one standing, finally. I want to thank our speaker tonight. I think he did a great job. Got us all thinking, got us all stirred this up, and we're all thinking about the next election, what to do and what not to do. A couple things that you mentioned Laura Presley. She was speaker twice, once about 6 months ago and once about a year ago. And she ran for city council in Austin and lost. And she found out later that it was rigged. And so she went to court on it, and she ended up going all the way to Supreme Court. The problem, there was no paper ballots with her election, and they couldn't register anything. And all the machines were done in the Secretary of State's office, and that there was no poll watchers there. There was poll watchers at the election, but that was it. So she brought up a couple points. There are paper ballots on election day. There are paper ballots on senior voting early. There are no paper ballots on early voting, just so you know. So if there's no paper ballots on early voting, that means that the Secretary was at the Secretary's office in Austin can change those votes, and it caused a lot of problems. And that, whenever you have something like that, it's always open for somebody to do something to you. And so that has to be, there should be paper ballots behind. Maybe you could address that sometime. There should be paper ballots behind early voting. I don't see any reason why they can't do it. And that's what is essential. Anyway, that was my comment as far as what happened. I remember FDR, he said, the only thing to fear is fear itself. And today in our elections and our president and others, they're fearing everything. Fear immigrants, fear this, fear that. And you got society running around chasing each other. That's not, I'll go back to the original point. The only thing to fear is fear itself. We need to work together, be together, and even vote together, and we'll bear through this, and not worry about it so much. Anyway, thank you. You're up.
And Steve,
I want to make one statement because I work the polls at early voting.
All right.
They've counted down, that's great.
Let me make your last statement. Go ahead.
Everybody heard you. Yeah, that's all I had to say. They're counted downtown. I work both places. I've been down there for the county. So they're counted down.
Yep, as I mentioned before, roll up your sleeves. Don't just sit back and complain, throw rocks. Roll up your sleeves. It's been pointed out here, precinct chair positions open. Polls could use more voting clerks, people to go work the polls. Take time to go to your city council meeting, your local elections. education board, talk to your nieces, nephews, cousins, whatever it may be out there. You got relatives, kids in high schools, friends, talk to them about registering to vote, volunteer, get involved, take people to the polls, do the get out to vote canvas, things like this. As our lady here just mentioned, what was the name of that group?
Headcount.org.
Headcount.org. If you're retired, find some time. You may not need the money, but find something that'll make you want to get up in the morning, go volunteer, and keep pushing and keep moving, make a difference. Society, roll up your sleeve, get in, make a difference. Don't just whine and complain. Throw rocks. Have a good evening.
That was one side.